I'm in this mode today. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if this imagery, incites something in you when this comes on, you know what I'm saying? And we get it in like that or whatever. But I'm gonna take it off because I don't know if I'm frightening you when I do stuff like that, or I turn you away. Because I would like for you to, say, come and listen if you would, dare to. I'm Alex Will 64, by the way. Thank you for watching any of my videos, including this one, this live stream on Holography or Ether-INS. Self promotion here. You can go to my website, ether-ins.teachable.com, where I have courses on various subjects. The Alchemy of the Isis thesis, based on those Judy K. King books or whatever. That's coming up on December 7th. Of this year, and it's going to be live, so you can get for those who sign up on time, you'll be able to have these sessions that I'm gonna do for the actual course. You'll be able to be a part of them, like you'll be asking questions and whatever, you know what I'm saying? You'll be a part of that. So visit my website, and also again, all the deleted content that was on my page before, on from 2020 to 2022, has now been combined into a course known as the Doth Star Legacy Suite. You can also enroll into that. I have a good discount for you. So check me out. Now, the title of this is Meditation on Death. Your entrance ensures your exit. Now, I'm probably just like you in one respect, where hopefully be coming to YouTube and listening to whoever is sitting here talking about this subject, along with other subjects. If we're talking about, veganism or magic or spirituality, stuff like that, brujeria, say you come to YouTube and you listen to all these different people speak on it. And just like any subject, I want to start off by saying this. Do we just take everyone's conclusion and run with it? Can't we come to our own conclusions, or are we dependent upon people to come to the conclusions for us? Now, there's nothing wrong with contemplating or viewing someone or reading someone's conclusion, like multiple people's conclusions. Like you probably have 20 different people talking about the same subject, and they all have a different take on what's being talked about. And then you may say, well, after viewing these 20 different people's understanding of death, this is what I'm going to conclude on. And that's completely fine. And hopefully I can be one of those people that you can learn from, or if not learn from, to listen to see what I have to say on the subject, and this subject being death. First off, people often think that life and death are opposite ends of each other. That's a commonly held belief. I'm not here to tell you it's right or wrong. I'm here to say that I've come to a conclusion where life and death are not opposites. And what I've found in my own research and in my own practice is actually birth and death are opposites of each other. And life is actually opposite of what you would call anti-life, or, if we talk about ancient Egyptian, I know you like ancient Egyptian stuff, Hotep, the Duat or the Tuat, the underworld, which are reflections of each other based on what I've read on this subject and what I've seen and what I've, did my own practices on to see that. So death and birth are opposites of each other. Let's go with that premise so that we can understand and meditate on death. Are you afraid to die? You want to die today? If you died today, would you be satisfied with your life? Would you be okay with it? You know what I'm saying? Do you have a death wish? Have you ever wished death? Have you ever contemplated suicide? Did you ever want to just do someone in? Like really just remove them? I'm not going to say, because I don't want, say YouTube. All the YouTubers of 2022 are afraid of YouTube admins or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Because they have all the power now. So it's like if you say something down, like you can get demonetized or have your videos shadow banned, where, yeah, you put them up, but they ain't going to let the video spread out to all your followers or whatever. They can do that to you. It's called shadow banning. So like I said, we all have this thing that Sigmund Freud. Let's start there. We can go further back than that, obviously, but let's just start with this thing called a death drive, because that's something I do agree with when it comes to Sigmund Freud, this psychoanalyst of psychology. Talks about a death drive, and a death drive is basically all your urges and those forces of mind that urge you or lead you into a death situation. Now, this death situation doesn't necessarily mean that or isn't limited to you like killing something or killing somebody, or you know what I'm saying, causing death to people. It could be you causing death unto yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's just death itself. Like how death is administered and meted out may, you know what I'm saying, be based on different factors going on in your life or whatever. But the death drive is definitely something that I'll agree with, is something that we all share in different degrees and in different expressions. So, for example, sex itself is a form of death, because look at the aspects of it. If we're talking about your own individuality or your ego or you being a one person, well, you just joined bodies with this other person in whatever way that you join bodies with them, usually through your sex organs. So by that act alone, you have killed off, or it's an act of you killing off your individuality, because now you just brought in another person and you're sharing bodies with them. So that is a form of death just right there. And then obviously you orgasm, you know what I'm saying? You bust a nut, or you know what I'm saying, a woman had a multiple orgasms that, you know, I guess they don't be having a lot because dudes don't know, men don't be know what they be doing in the bedroom. Um, that's death, right? Because in French you have the phrase "la petite mort," which means the little death, right? That's a form of death. Um, Also, like for example, if you was my woman and I cheated on you, right? Like had a sneaky link, or you know what I'm saying, I had did something with a side chick or whatever. Had sex with your cousin. I don't do that stuff, and you'll never. I'm just saying, even in that whole thing about crime of passion, like if you wanted to retaliate against me and whoever I had sex with, that's you have your death drive is activated. Why? Because I was supposed to die with you in that union with each other, with that bond with each other. I was supposed to die. You was supposed to die. But I didn't die with you in that bond. I went and did some dying with another person. So in the most deep level, depthical level of your being, you want to further carry out that death. So this is why a lot of crimes of passion can come about by you being cheated on or having your heart broken, or infidelity, because you and the person was supposed to, your individuality was supposed to be dead, or that you're supposed to be two in one. That didn't happen. So now that passion that you have is driven towards making sure that that other person that cheated on you experiences some sort of death. Since they couldn't experience that death with you, you want them to experience it, in some other way. So that's just one explanation of this stuff. And then obviously, you actually being the one who goes through a physical death, right? Or someone around you has gone through a physical death. So the question is, well, what happens when you die? So think about the time you were physically born into the time that you physically die, or someone physically is born and physically die. What were they doing from the time they were physically born until the time that they physically die? What's the common thing they were doing the whole time? That's something to study. Now, I can come to a conclusion and say, well, they were pretty much feeding it into the physical illusion the whole time they were physical or experiencing physicality. They fed into that to the point where they mostly based their existence upon what they were seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, or whatever in their five senses. So throughout their whole birth up until physical death, they were thinking that this whole illusion is the end all be all to their existence, right? Like they fell into that belief system that this is all there is, right? So upon physical death, because they have grown so accustomed and comfortable in this physicality, they are going to take that mode of existence with them. If you want to think in terms of physical location, we won't have to think in those terms. We can also say that they try to stick to that physical, that physicality of mind. So what they do when they die, what actually happens is that they adhere to it, and it brings them back into this whole physical thing again. Why? Because it's all you desiring that physicality. And your mind is shifting, is trying to shift from this physicality, but you keep holding on to it. So everything that you think you're seeing when you know what I'm saying, like for example, a near death experience, for example, what you're really actually seeing is just all the things that you want to hold on to. Even in that movie, what's the movie called? Flatliners, with Kevin Bacon and what's his name? Keither Sutherland. They had Julia Roberts in there. I was just watching this like last month. What happens when they did, spoiler alert, what happens when they went into all that death? And they were trying to induce death while they were at the college. What happened to them? They started going into different memories and different traumas upon that death state. Because these are the things that are all a part of your mind that are stored here and there in your mind until your mind chooses to go to that place, or to, quote unquote place, right? Because beyond the physical, are there any physical traits? Like, for example, if you go beyond the physical world, do you still have time? Do you still have mass? Do you still have physical phenomena happening in a chronological order? Because these things don't have to be this way after you leave the physical world, or your physical illusion fades away. They don't have to stick. But because you're used to it and you've grown accustomed to it during your physical life, this is what happens when you die. You go back to these memories and these traumas that you've had in, say, any previous time or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And in that case, you can definitely be stuck there. And one of the things that you can watch is that whole American Horror Story Coven, where towards like maybe like the last two episodes, these witches are trying to compete for who's going to be the head witch of the coven. And there's one woman or witch that gets caught up in a loop of some sort of trauma she experienced back in her high school years. And she's stuck in that loop. Stuck in that loop. So this is a post I made before where, it's not really the physical dimension that we're trapped in or imprisoned in. It's really you being imprisoned in your own cycles. Because what encircles you or imprisons you more than a cycle? And that can be, what can be considered your own personal hell, because it's something being repeated, some traumatic experience, like you being abused or you being sexually abused or some sort of humiliating experience, and it's happening all in loops over and over and over again. But understanding that we have to take ultimate responsibility for everything. That's what I would love to impart to you as you're watching this. I'm a person who has accepted ultimate responsibility for everything that has ever happened to me. I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not blaming the government, the Illuminati. You know what I'm saying? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not blaming my worst physical. I'm not. Who's to blame? When I'm the one who chose to experience everything, I'm responsible for my own existence. So that means anything that happens to me was on my own accord, whether I choose to forget that or go through some sort of amnesia or not. This is the part of the initiation, by the way. You know what I'm saying? Without me revealing too much, you have to come to the ultimate responsibility. Some of you out there are still blaming other people and other things. You're blaming your environment. You're blaming the ghetto you lived in. If you're from that, you're blaming, someone who sexually or physically or verbally or emotionally abused you when you was a child. When it comes to ultimate responsibility, none of that stuff is none of their fault. It's all you. Why? Because you chose to experience it. I have a saying, and it goes like this: nothing precedes your decision to experience it. Nothing no event precedes your decision to experience it. What does that mean if we unpack it? It means that everything you experience was of your own design, your own configuration. You chose to experience it. So, if, like, for example, if there's an event and you are in the event along with 2 or 3 other people, y'all all conspired for this event to happen. So, the knowledge in that is figuring out, well, or remembering or recollecting why you all chose to be in this experience together. This does not exclude death, meaning that your death was something that you chose to experience the way that you experienced it or will experience it. Is it far-fetched for me to say any of these things? Like, am I making a stretch here, do you think? Said, is that a pre-life contract? Yeah, I mean, that's a way you can say it. I've heard people say it like that before. Like, these contracts that you make with people before, any physical thing even happens. Yes. That's a way to look at it. Said, and how do you process trauma from the forgetful state? Well, that's the thing. You're here to get over the forgetfulness. Because that's you knowing the knowledge of self. Because even you choosing to forget something was a choice you made. You made that choice to forget. That's something to understand, right? Because why would you even come here to live a physical existence and then you want to forget things that happened before then? What's the point of that? That's something you have to study on your own. But getting back into death, this is something that you chose to experience. Or at least that's what I've come to the conclusion. Again, this is my conclusion. I'm sharing with you something that, I don't have to share it with you, but maybe it'll help. So let's play with that idea. Let's say it's true for you. Like, you chose the place and time and the cause of your death. Why? Even if you haven't even experienced it yet. What's the point? Because again, this is you. If this is not an understanding you're used to or you never even heard of, you may be on the track of thinking someone's killing me, something happened to me, I got in an accident, I got sick, or whatever other reasons that you die. Right, 6 million reasons that someone dies. But how come you never understood it that you was the one who agreed to die that way or go out that way? See, it changes the dynamic of the whole life you're experiencing right now, doesn't it? It changes it. Because you think some outside force took your life, right? Or it made you die, you know what I'm saying? But what if that outside force was of your own design? Think about that. See, these are concepts that you want to contemplate before even thinking about any type of, you want to get into the spirituality. Just think about the concept behind life itself. You came in, you was born, you was physically born, right? Why? Why are you here? Why experience the physical illusion when you can experience the alternative? What's the point of you being here? What's the point? Because we can also come to a conclusion that from the time you was physically born to the time you'll physically die, you designed the whole thing. Or if you don't want to say, oh, I didn't design this, well, you definitely agreed to experience it. So whether it's your design or not, you agreed to go through the experience of it. Why are you in the situation you're in right now? Is it because someone did something to you, or someone or, you know what I'm saying, it's always somebody else. Why isn't it you? You chose to go through that experience. You know what I'm saying? You chose that. I know this is something that a lot of people aren't ready to hear because, again, it's always something else doing it. It's always something else's fault. It's always something else making the move, or someone doing something to you, or someone taking, like, you know what I'm saying? It's always something or someone else. When you come to a conclusion like I have, where I'm the one who designed the whole thing, or at least agreed to the design that was given to me. I had a choice in that situation. Now, Memento mori. Let's start there as well. The concept of you remembering death because you were so you chose a life where you were so soaked into, or so inert, or so connected to physical laws and physical phenomena and physical things, right? So remembering death is remembering that all these things that are physical or physical phenomena, they are going to fade away. They're going to become nothing, or fade back into the, you know, saying the one essence of things. It's not going to last forever. Memento mori. Your physical life is not going to last forever. That's something to meditate on. Meditate on this stuff. Study death. See, I'm of the whole learning of, am I going to wait for death to come to me, or am I going to come to death first? I remember, like, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I was studying the angel Azrael, which is supposedly supposed to be the angel of death. And one of the things I was reading, it was, I forgot the title of this necromancer book that I was reading, and it was talking about how Azrael isn't depressed that you've died. Azrael is depressed that you've died without knowledge. So you're just another casualty of ignorance, really. Because you did no study, no contemplation, no spiritual advancement towards death your whole time living. You did none of that. Or not enough to actually, when death comes, you know what I'm saying, you're just another human. Or you're on a human level of understanding what's going on. So you did not study this thing which is considered to be inevitable. It's inevitable that your physical death is drawing near. So is that something to be depressed about, or miserable about, or afraid of? Because if you look at a lot of people's their behavioral set, like the set of behaviors that they exhibit, is sometimes usually revolving around a fear of death, or trying to sustain a physical survival. So if you can override that fear, or that, you know what I'm saying, that attachment to this physical stuff, then you are pretty much moving towards the knowledge of death. See, these are concepts and abstracts to understand before we even get into any type of, you know, any ritual or any type of rites, like funerary rites or mortuary rites, before we get, you know what I'm saying, before we even do that. These are understandings to have. Because it's an inevitability. But with that inevitability of death, are we just to die as other humans do? Or is there things that can be done, or practiced, or you know, contemplated or meditated on before that physical death arrives? Because to say that your physical life is going to end, does that mean your existence ends? No, doesn't mean it. They're not equally, that's not an equal understanding. Because that means that your life is just bound, or your existence is just bound in physical life. I thought that your existence goes beyond this. I thought you was a spiritual being having a physical experience. Now that's easy to say, but it's not always easy to understand. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you want to talk about spirits and stuff, where there's spirits that linger around certain haunted houses or certain corners, like I don't know if you ever rode past a street or a tree while you was driving, and the tree had all this, like, um, teddy bears and balloons and memorials and posters or whatever for the person that I guess died there from a car accident or something like that. Um, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, this is your own mind designing all this stuff for you. You know what I'm saying? Does your mind die when you die? When you physically die? I would have to say no. It doesn't. So that means it's probably still active, though your physical self isn't. But because you within yourself have grown accustomed to this physical stuff or this physical phenomenon, your mind, use the mind, you're still trying to create that scenario for yourself. You know what I'm saying? You're still trying to create that scenario, so you're used to it. So if I introduce a type of mind state that doesn't have any type of physical features to or physical laws attached to it, you would probably reject it because you've grown accustomed to the physical design of things. So upon your physical death, that's what you're doing. You're hanging on to something that your physical life introduced you to. Why is your underworld, if that's where you go when you die, or the Duat, why is it still in the likeness and shape of something that happened while you was having a physical experience? You ever seen someone try to explain death to you or give you images of death and it looks just like something physical or happened in physical life? That's someone that isn't ready to detach from the physical phenomena or the structure of physical phenomena of things. They're not ready to detach. So going back to what happens when you die, it makes sense that your mind is still trying to create scenarios that mimic the physical life you just lived. So when people say, "Oh, you make your own hell," I mean that's pretty much literal in a sense. You did just make that your own hell out of that, or your own. You've made it already. Think about all the different cultures around the world who all have their books or sacred texts about death and dying. How come they're all not unital or in unison with everything that's being talked about? They all have their differences and their different approaches and the different, themes that happen. Why is it not all the same? Because now it's like we have to look into what are these conceptions after death and are they real beyond someone making their mind up about them. Like, for example, if I have my own conception about what's going to be there when I lose my physical life, is that real? And it's like, is that universal to everyone, or is that just my own conception of it? Again, creating your own hell or your own underworld or your own configuration of whatever that is. Because again, when you physically die, does your mind die? Your brain dies. I mean, obviously, if you're going back to the whole ancient Kemet or ancient Egyptian thing, you know about them doing the embalming process or the funerary rite of, snatching your brain, your physical brain out of your nose or whatever, out of your skull, and tossing it like it was a paper plate. Because they say, back in their pyramid text that there is no importance of the brain. It's more about the importance of the heart. You know what I'm saying? But again, if you're a person who just adheres to the physicality of this stuff, then it would frighten you or even disgust you by the fact that someone just tossed your physical brain out of your body like it was just some paper plate or a fork or something, spork or whatever. But again, understanding that mind is not limited to your physical brain or your physical body at all, then again, that means your mind has nothing to do with the or does not is not involved in death along with your physical body. It's only involved in the experience of it. So that means your mind survives the physical death process. But some people, most people, a lot of people, because they don't have the knowledge of death or the knowledge of going beyond their own physical configuration of their life, they stick to it. So now their afterlife just becomes a reflection of their physical. Because when someone says or deals with the principle, all is mind, the universe is mental, how far does that stretch? How far does that expand? What's the scope of that? Is that just within the scope of, thinking mind, or does that include even your afterlife, your interdimensional planets, your multiverse? Is that all mind too? And that's what I'm concluding on. I don't know what your conclusion of that would be, but that's my conclusion on that. You just go through a change of phase of mind. The phase of your mind changes. That's it. The phase of your perceptions change. That's it. Even when you like dealing with, because what I will do is I'm gonna put a link in this video after the live stream is done. But it's a link where there's a comparison between the Egyptian Book of the Dead, or what is called the Pert M Haru, or the pyramid text, and it's compared to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And they do a comparison on these two different cultures who seem to have a prominence in understanding, what happens when you die and what things you can do upon the approach of death and while you're experiencing it. And that becomes very interesting of itself, because again, is this conception of afterlife accurate, or is it universal to everyone experiencing it? Because think about the whole wheel of samsara within the whole Indian thing or the Hindu thing, where it's like, you're on this wheel of life and death, or excuse me, birth and death, and you keep on that wheel. And their whole aim with that is to get beyond or go beyond those circles. So you did practices within your physical life so that you are not continually on that cycle of birth and death, right? You're trying to get out of that. But it all goes back to mind, because the only reason you're even trapped in there is of your own making and design. Who or what else is trapping you in that circle of birth and death? Who are you going to blame? You're going to blame some deity or some god or whatever? Or is it really just you? And that's something to realize. That's a milestone to reach. You know what I'm saying? That's an understanding. And there's a difference between me telling it to you versus you going through the experience to see it for yourself. But I am here to, what I'm saying, to, if you allow me to, can guide you in that. Because why else would you experience anything other than what you designed or what you came up with? Because sleep is the cousin of death. So what makes sleep the cousin of death? Like, okay, if they're cousins, that means they're related. That means they have, the same blood running through them, or the same essence of what they are running through them, right? In a figurative sense. So what happens when you go to sleep and dream at night? For example, who or what is the designer of your dream? Why is your dream that way? Why was it that way upon waking up this morning? Who designed that? Who shaped that? Who induced that? Who made it that way? If you was dreaming about having sex and whoever you had sex with, who put that together? Why didn't you have sex with someone else? Like, for example, if you had sex with an old girlfriend or something, in your dream that you woke up from this morning? Why was it her and not some other woman? Why was it specifically her? Again, who designed your dream to be the way that it was? Because if you can figure that out, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to figure out what happens when you physically die. Guaranteed. That's something I'll stand on. So again, figure out who designed your dream this morning, or the other day or other night, and then you will be able to understand what happens when you die. Because it's this thing of thinking you can take the physical with you, or you're trying to hold on to that configuration as you get into different phases and states of mind. You see what I'm saying? Because what a part of my practice, and I'll admit this, is me meditating on death. I meditate on it. I'm pretty sure did you hear this before? This is something you can do, and it's a valid practice. I would recommend that to you if you are interested in doing it. Meditate regularly on death. And not just your physical death, but the death of, or the ending of certain things that the physical realm introduces to you. So, for example, this whole concept of you having good health while you're a physical human, like you eating right and drinking all the alkaline water you can drink and eating all the sea moss you can eat and all this stuff, there's a death to that. Meditate on it. Like your attachment to your physical health, that attachment can go through a death. It can end because it's an attachment to a physical realm or the physical configuration. That could fade. That's transient. It's temporary. So why are you still holding on to it? These expectations that society has for you and your humanity. Like, for example, you're supposed to have your own house by 30, or you're supposed to be in a six-figure salary, or you're supposed to, have kids by this date in your life, or anything that they have this expectation for you as a human being. All that can die. Because this is the thing you hold on to going into your next life or going into a next level of your existence. You're holding on to these expectations and these goal points that you're trying to get to. And they all can die away. They can die. They can end. They can dissolve. This leads back into alchemy. Why? Because you're dealing with the concept of solute or solute, solvent, and solution. Now, if anybody out there understands chemistry, you know that the solvent is water. They usually say that the universal solvent is water because anything you place in water will eventually be dissolved within the water. So the water is the solvent. Now, the solute is anything you place in the water. So this can be salt, this can be rocks, this can be crystals, this can be Kool-Aid dust, whatever you put in your water, whatever you could put in water, right? So eventually over time, whatever's placed, the solute or the rock or the solid thing that you put in there is going to dissipate and dissolve. And it's going to become the solution where now it's a mixture or a fusion with the water itself. So this is an alchemical understanding. So now let's apply this to your daily practice, or you just dealing with spirituality and meditations on death. That's something that the alchemist does. We dissolve all things back into mind itself. It's all mind. So why are you perceiving things in a plurality or in a duality when it's all mind? What's going on, Mike? What's going on? Glad you could tune in. We're talking about death today. Everybody got a theory or an explanation about death. What if that person's theory or explanation is theirs alone? So the only people that's going to experience that phase or whatever they talking about is them explaining it to you. For example, if you believe in the Christian devil and there's a Christian hell, you've conceived that for yourself. That's where you go, because that's how powerful your mind is. That's how powerful you are as the mind. You constructed that. You're going to construct your own hell, just like you constructed your own physical existence and your own dreams. You are the architect behind the whole thing. Or at least if you're not the entire architect, you accepted someone else's architecture. Because did you come up with the whole Christian devil and going to hell and did you come up with that? But you see people feeding into that. You was once a Christian before, maybe you fed into that. So imagine if you still stuck with that configuration, most likely that's what you're going to see when you die. It's all mind, it's mental. What else happens? Here's another saying for you. Nothing happens outside of your own configuration. Meaning, again, going back to what I said before, you make the decision to experience anything here. You've already decided that you was going to go through that experience, be it something in physical life or going towards death. You chose it all. So if you know yourself enough, you'll understand why and when and how you're going to die physically. You can get up to that level of understanding things. You can. It's possible. Hell, I mean, some people even get visions before it's time to go, right? Like you can have a dream that you're going to die today, or tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? You can have that dream. You can have the signs and saying synchronicities and all that stuff. All you can see all that before you are going to go. But again, since we're dealing with mind and not physical location or locality, you're actually not going anywhere. Not physically. So for anybody talking about you're going somewhere physically when you die, well, that's something I can't really agree with on the most core fundamental level of things. I can't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Again, it's a phase or a change of phase. That's it. So knowing what phase that you're going to take on or what mind state you're going to take on upon this physical death is something to figure out or find out, right? Or to discover. And this is where we could get into, certain deities that are supposed to be, associated with death. Like, for example, most obvious is Anpu or Anubis from the whole ancient Kemet or Egyptian pantheon, who's supposed to be the opener of the way. You know what I'm saying? So it's supposed to be this guide into the Duat or the underworld, for example. Same thing you get when you go to Greco-Roman mythology with the whole Charon. How you supposed to get this person or this being a coin or some sort of fee to get on his ferry boat and be taken throughout the underworld or whatever. Going back to the Kemet thing, as displayed in those pyramid texts, you come to the whole ordeal with the scales. You know what I'm saying? And then Anpu and Jehudi or Toph, or what I'm saying, these deities are surrounding and doing this weighing of the heart ceremony or whatever, right? So, and then that goes back into, are you still holding on to things or still holding on to some sort of, physicality, and you're trying to bring that with you into, I guess, a higher state or a more advanced state of mind. And that's not something that is going to accompany you. So it's the whole thing of you bringing baggage to the pearly gates of heaven or whatever, right? Because your baggage is not just your emotions or your feelings, it's also these configurations and conceptions that you agreed to experience here in the physical state of mind. You're thinking you're going to bring that with you into this, these higher states of mind. Doesn't happen that way. So it becomes weight. It becomes like a form of like a heavy burden that you're still carrying around. So the thing, or what's being practiced by some of us here is, while we're having this physical experience, is learning this science and this ability to dissolve any of these physical configurations back into mind. It's the operation of circle and the square. The square representing physical life or physical experience, and then as we circle it, like the Masons do with the square and compass, we're circling it, meaning that we're bringing it back into a state of mind. We're recognizing each physical experience we ever went through as only, and most importantly, and at its essence, a mental state, a mind thing. So we're taking the salute, so I'm gonna just use a straw as a salute, going back to alchemy. It's a salute, right? And then we're sticking it or putting it into the solvent, which is water, the universal solvent, also known as the alkahest, and we're dissolving the form of the solute to bringing it into a solution. See, this is the chemistry they're not really they're telling you about the solvent and solution, but they're not really telling you about what it actually means on an esoteric occult level. If it's all mind, why are you perceiving it as something other than mind? Death is mind. It's a mental thing. Life is mind. Death, birth, mind. What else is it? Why are you seeing it as something else other than what it actually is? And because because most people, I ain't gonna say you, but this can apply to you if you're not looking at it that way or seeing it that way, because then that leads to what? You being detached from it. But because you're not detached from that, you bring it with you, quote unquote, bring it with you, because we're not talking about physical location or distance. You bring it with you to the pearly gates or to the, what I'm saying, the weighing of the heart. Or you bring it with you as you journey through Hades and going past those 5 rivers, what I'm saying, of the underworld in Greco mythology or Greco-Roman mythology. You got baggage. So again, to sum that up, what you experience at death is your baggage. What else are you going to experience other than something you designed or something you went through? Because think about you being physically born, for example. Let's deal with Sankofa. Let's go back to your physical birth. Let's just deal with that. We can go back further, but let's deal with your physical birth. As soon as that water broke in your mother's womb, and it was time for the contractions to start happening, and you're about to be pushed through this woman's vagina, or in certain cases you're being cut out on a cesarean section. You are experiencing a trauma because your abode within that womb has just been destroyed. It has been it has been cut open. It's been broken open. That's a trauma to be contemplated here. And once that happens, now this is a part of your being. It's a part of your physicality in the physical. Because now you're going to do everything in your power to try to avoid that type of event again. And so that next event for most people is physical death. Because again, it's a tearing open of the physical that you have now grown accustomed to, just in the same way that you grew accustomed to that womb. So again, to avoid that, you do all these different behaviors in order to avoid or try to get away from death, which is an inevitability. So what do? You make sure that you are eating, you make sure that you are living somewhere safe. Like these are all the things you're doing to avoid the inevitable because you're traumatized by it by the time you come out the womb. So this is the reason why people fear death. Why else would you fear it? Because we're putting the trauma of birth in the same category as you being traumatized through someone screaming at you for the first time. Like if you got cussed out by a parent or somebody while you was like 2 years old and it frightened you and it scared you to that level. This is why you have a lot of people who are very sensitive to the things you say or just words. They have a very thin skin because of that trauma they experienced late or earlier on where they were damn near frightened to death by someone saying something or hollering it at them. So now it's a repeat of that trauma. Saying if I were to just cuss you out right now, you'd feel threatened by me just cussing you out. Feelings of death will arise in you. So now that you have to defend yourself from that death. So now you start to get belligerent just by me calling you a bitch or whatever I say to you, right? But that's not the only way you can approach that. And that takes some sort of maturity and some sort of overcoming of the trauma of you being cussed out. It can frighten you, right? So getting to your physical death, which is an inevitability, this is why most of your behaviors are kind of contingent upon you avoiding death. Now let's bring it home to initiation, because this is where it makes sense. Why does all your initiations you ever heard of or ever experienced have to do with you going through some sort of symbolic death? Why? So if we're truly dealing with real initiation, not you being initiated into some cultural spiritual system or you being initiated into a gang or a frat or what, fraternity, sorority, any of that. No. The real initiation is you going through a true rebirth, meaning you are overcoming the trauma of your physical birth through the process. See, this is just surface level stuff when it comes to death or whatever. You know what I'm saying? This is surface level stuff. But this is something that I deal with every day by choice. You know what I'm saying? By design, by choice. You don't have to choose that. Most people don't. Because again, their whole thing is to avoid it. My whole thing now is to go straight towards it. You ever heard of people saying that people are often in survival mode where it's like, they're struggling or they're impoverished or they're in some sort of state where they have to keep, they're in survival mode. So that means they move a little bit more dangerous than other people because it's all about survival. So that means they'll kill anybody or hurt anybody or take anybody down if it means that that person or that thing is getting in the way of their survival. So you think about something like living in the streets or being a thug or a gangster, you know what I'm saying, being in that underworld, right? So it's a dog eat dog type of thing because everyone's on this whole survival thing. So if it takes for you to be murked or taken out for me to survive or for my family to eat or for me to make the money that I want to make and survive out here, then so it happens, right? So again, this science is all about overriding that trauma in that survival zone or that comfort zone you've created for yourself. Because again, a death drive is something everyone has. You are driven towards it because again, you've come into an existence where there is time. or at least a way of time where things do not last, you know what I'm saying, past their expiration date. When it's expired, it expires. Things lose shape, things grow old. Your body grows old. The fruits and vegetables that you like to eat now, they die, they expire, don't they? They ripen and then they expire. You don't eat them anymore after a certain date or a certain phase that it has taken. And getting back to the whole thing about sex too, that's a form of survival as well. Because what are you doing when you're having sex, or what's the end point of it? You're basically, you know, reproducing yourself in some way. Like for a man, you're reproducing yourself by shooting the sperm. A woman, you're reproducing yourself by, you know, having the eggs there to be fertilized. So through that offspring, some part of you survives. So that's a survival mechanism, is to be able to reproduce, right? Not just you surviving individually, but your species or your lineage surviving. So that ties back into death because again, a lot of species out here in the animal kingdom, for example, they die soon after they give birth, or they allow themselves to be eaten by their young. Or the reverse is true, they eat their young. Or like in a sense of with the black widow, the female black widow spider, and I think also the female praying mantis, they eat the male. They eat him. They suck his juices out. They kill him. So picture that, like you out here having sex with women, you know what I'm saying? Or not even just women, just you had sex with this one woman, and then afterwards she get to eat you. But if you know about the science of sex, you'll understand that the woman is constantly eating you when she's having sex with you. The reverse is true to an extent too, like the man can also eat the woman or whatever. Because again, some people don't understand that sex is a soft core cannibalism. I've posted that a couple times on my page. Like they don't understand that the act of sex is an act of cannibalism. They don't understand that part. But if you're constantly using your mouth, right? When you have sex, you be doing that. And then also, if you look at the woman's vagina and how that's often compared to a mouth, even you calling the outer anatomy of the vagina labia. Labia means lip. So you're even labeling parts of her vagina a lip or something that you would associate with your mouth. So if you look at her vagina as that mouth, and obviously that's something where it's being used in sexual intercourse, she's eating you. She has to, through her vagina, she has to eat your sperm in order for that sperm to reach her eggs and for that to be fertilized and for there to be conception. But if it meant that she was going to kill you in order for your legacy or your lineage or your genetics to survive in a new offspring, would you participate in it? I mean, I guess that's nothing you would ask a male spider or a male black widow spider because he gets eaten right after he has sex with her. So I'm just kind of detailing like your death drive is also in your reproductive drive. There they go hand in hand. Because what are we even striving for? We're striving for a form of immortality. Even with us trying to have the knowledge of death and then send death or go beyond death into immortality, right? There's this drive towards immortality. It's in you. But what knowledge you get and what processes you take can then differ and vary from person to person. So one of the key things about the occult itself is you learning how to become immortal by dealing with death. So for example, we can simply say immortality through mortification. Learning how to die. Do you want to learn? Because again, it's that whole thing of arriving at death's door before death arrived at yours. Now, you've heard of the concept. I already said it here in this live stream. It was talking about near-death experiences, where how come all your near-death, mostly all these near-death experiences are reflections or they're based on something physical, some sort of physical experience you had. Like some people, when they have near-death experiences, they say that they've met up with dead relatives and all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? If it's all mind, then your dead relative just went back into some phase or state of mind. So one of the things that can help you is understanding mind is not limited to a brain. Because technically you can say that your intestines is a brain. You can say that your fallopian tube, like your egg sac for a woman, like that's a brain. My testicles is a brain. Anywhere there's a hormonal sensor in the body can be considered a brain. So for those of you that are chakra enthusiasts, because chakras are usually aligned with the endocrine glands along the base of the spine or on the body, that's every part of that is a brain. See, these are the funerary sciences. This is stuff to know, if you're going to study death and be able to conquer it. You often see a lot of Masonic illustrations where it has death or a casket at the bottom of the illustration, and then above it is all this, illustrious and bright and lively illustrations of all these other things. You know what I'm saying? So that's symbolic of that Mason conquering death. But do all these Masons know this stuff? Because it's an inevitability. So what do you do with the inevitability? Is there something you can do with that inevitability? Death is promised. I have a saying that says, "Your entrance ensures your exit." Your entrance ensures your exit, meaning your birth ensures your death. Birth and death are gateways. They're passageways. That's why they're more opposites of each other than saying that life and death is opposite of each other. Because the opposite of life is anti-life, underground, underworld, Duat. So you have these two passageways, birth and death, reverse opposites of each other. And if you ever get more deep or more depthical in this science of death, we understand how do we take the features of birth and the features of death and combine them into one physical body. How do you combine birth and death into a living body? That's a science. That's a formula. That's a operation you do. That's an operation you undergo. Not like, say you get your surgery or your plastic surgery, or getting something cut out of you like your appendix. Or no, this is a true operation of overcoming death. Again, immortality through mortification. So how do you learn how to die? Well, have you ever studied a corpse before? What happens to a decaying body? Have you studied that before? Is there any similarities between a decaying corpse and a body being developed during birth in the womb? Are there similarities between that? And then this whole word afterlife, you know what I'm saying? This misnomer, afterlife. Because this is me saying that afterlife is the opposite of life. So it's a mind state that is, it runs parallel to physical life, right? So you're calling it an afterlife when actually it precedes your physicality as well. So it's an after and a before life. So that duat is something that say a state of mind you were in before you was even physically born. So why just simply call it an afterlife? It's a before life as well. So these officers of death that I like to call them, you know, myself included, we get into the science of being born and dying and knowing that there is a connection between both of them that needs to be done. We study the science of these two passageways into this physical and out of this physical life. So we don't just study death, we study birth too. We study the prenatal and the postmortem. Let me repeat that. We study the prenatal and the postmortem. What was your intentions prenatally? What is your intentions postmortem? This is all included when you know thyself. There's so much to the concept of know thyself beyond physical life. So this is what I do as an officer of death. Studying funerary rites, not just in Kemet, all over the world. What are they saying? Talking about what happens when you die. What do you think happens? Because it's all mind, so we have to contemplate what are you imagining, what are you thinking, what are you perceiving, what are you holding in your memory bank? All that goes into that. Because you won't know until you experience it, right? Because what if I told you the experience of it and then you experience something completely different? Come to your own conclusions, man. Everybody has a conclusion, and no one, and let me say this, no one is above examination. You probably heard me say this before. No one is above examination. So even my conclusions can be tested. And I welcome the testing. So if you want to challenge what I'm saying here, you be my guest. Because it's just like the whole flat earth thing. Like, how do you know it's round or flat? Did you go to the edges of the earth to find out for yourself? I mean, yeah, we could sit here and read all the books and whoever wrote on it, but that's kind of secondary and vicarious to you actually having firsthand experience of it. And you know what I'm gonna say? All is mind. So whether it's flat, round, hexagonal, or super thick, you know what I'm saying? It's this post I put up where it's, it says that the earth is not round or flat, it's super thick, and then it shows earth shaped like a woman's ass or whatever. It's a joke. Instagram is a crazy place. Regardless of the shape of it, and it's all mind. You know what I'm saying? Start there first. Let that be your premise. Let that be your foundation. All is mind. So whatever shape it takes, it was something that dealt with mind first and foremost. So if it is flat, let's see what does it mentally mean, or what's the semiotics or the meaning of it being flat or round or hexagonal or dodecahedral. You know what I'm saying? But that's I'm getting way off topic. I'm just saying, like, how can someone be the end all be all of what you understand and you didn't experience it yourself? You know what I'm saying? Now, again, you get to decide and accept whose conclusions that you want to accept and and run with. You get to decide that. You don't get to decide that for me though, and I don't get to decide that for you. So as much as you say that I'm wrong, there's someone else out there that could agree with me in 100%. So what does that tell you? There's nothing quite universal like mind itself. Everything else is just a configuration, a state, or a condition of mind. So the mind is all, mind is forever, mind is infinite, mind is, what I'm saying, all there is. Then why are you sitting here living existence that's temporary or that expires? They even have an expiration date for you. They be saying men are expected to die around the age 65, and then for women it's slightly older, maybe like 70. So they even put a life expectancy on you out here. And some of you feed into it. Most of you feed into that expectancy. And you're getting your life expectancy information from people who we can say have a minus birth rate. But again, it all goes back to you because again, you chose to experience this. How's it working out for you? YEEYE. Your entrance ensures your exit. Memento mori. Remember death. Remember birth too. And that's all I had to say today. Hopefully, I helped you overcome some fears or some apprehensions about dealing with this subject of death. Probably gonna circle back around to it and get into some more details or whatever. But just we're dealing with the abstracts and the meanings or the principles before we get into the theories and the practices, right? So that we're on track throughout the whole thing. Philosophy, theory, practice. You know what I'm saying? That's our method. That's the alchemical method. So again, my name is Alex Will 64. Thank you for watching. Again, ether-ins.teachable.com. My courses are there. My services like my consultation and counseling, astrology, birth charts are also at that website. Like I said, if you don't see this live stream, like I said, I have to go into the configurations of it. There go that word configuration and make it public again. So just give me like maybe like an hour or so, and I'll have it back up on if you don't get a chance to rewatch it. I still think deep down you're afraid of death. We're going to help.